Warning: the following video features opinions, jokes, and criticisms written by a lifelong fan of film and the owner of the satirical movie review channel. Any footage or audio featured was critiqued in strict accordance with fair use doctrine. Any ridicule, exaggeration, sarcasm, or irony is intended to highlight the absurdity of the subject matter, as satire is intended to do. Winnie looks down and recognizes the grave he climbed out of all those years ago as a regenerative, DNA-altered, half-animal, living dead zombie magic kid. What have I said? Happening, folks! In 2023, dynamic duo Reese Waterfield and Scott Jeffrey made a huge box office splash with Blood and Honey. Keep doing that. It's an independent horror film that coincidentally featured a Winnie the Pooh type character just after it became available through public domain. Now, the boys put lots of hard work and dedication into writing the story, and as a champion of independent film myself, I believe the creative filmmakers responsible for this poorly received masterpiece of low-budget, heartfelt horror deserve everything they...
like when people go, oh, have you learned loads of lessons from the first one and stuff, it's like, no, because it was made in 6 days.
6 days? I didn't know that. That nearly made it sound like they rushed to finish it before anybody else could use Winnie the Pooh first. But that can't be right. These are filmmakers. I'm gonna try this from a different angle. The smash hit underdog filmmaking duo of Reese Waterfield and Scott Jeffrey hit it big in 2023 with their first ever horror movie.
And that year we made 46 feature films.
46 movies in a year? That's nearly a movie a week. But filmmakers put in long hours and a tremendous amount of work and planning and writing and revising and editing. Filmmakers are artists, and art comes from here. That's why people connect with movies in the first place. And if they are art and not some assembly line product, those poor fellas must have been emotionally drained making 46 movies.
It was on a conveyor belt. I was trying to make 100 films. I'd already done a load and I wanted to make 100 because I wanted to make my mark in the industry. And
100? Their goal was the number of movies. They didn't even mention the word story. There has to be some kind of misunderstanding. This sounds dishonest and empty, but it can't be. I know for a fact these guys reached out to a bunch of big YouTubers right before part 2 came out. Even young Chris at 3C said they contacted him, which is not surprising at all. The first movie made a bunch of money, but everybody hated it. Modern marketing budgets factor in YouTubers with big audiences for movies like this. It's just a sensible tactic in 2024. But you assume they're doing it in good faith. You don't think they would actually seek out weaker-minded content creators to swell their egos with a bunch of superficial, silly compliments, do you? Even if they did, nobody would ever fall for something so...
And much to my surprise, then they really started to praise me quite a bit and give me a lot of credit for what I had built on YouTube, you know.
Whoa. Okay, don't panic. I'm a fan of Cody's channel.
On YouTube, you know, Scott was talking about how cool it is that I've built a following the size that I have, and
I admire what he's done too, even though he does seem pretty angry most of the time. Also, did I just see smugness? I've got to play that back a bit slower.
You know, Scott was talking about how cool it is that I've built a following the size that I have, and
he hated the first movie like everybody else did. That's why they contacted him. His disdain for it even blossomed into a Twitter battle with the filmmakers. And I admired him for standing up to what they did. Not as individuals, of course. Who gives a shit about them as people, as supposed filmmakers? Still, this can't be right. I must be misinterpreting
that they admire that. And Andrew was funny enough, said that he actually watches my channel. He watched it before and even after the controversy, which was surprising to hear.
I could have misinterpreted twice.
And he was kind of giving me some praise there too.
3 times.
And unfortunately for them, I'm me.
All I can see is smugness every time he talks now.
And unfortunately for them, I'm me.
Hold on a second. I only have 3,000 subscribers, whom I appreciate dearly, each and every one. Clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about compared to these huge movie experts. You know what? I am probably just still messed up from the whole Chris Stuckman thing. The idea some of the actual people who inspired me to start my own channel were suddenly acting fake for money and fame was It was hard to take, but clearly that was different. It's not like there's some Stuckman mind virus spreading through the egos of some of YouTube's bigger movie review channels. For a person of integrity, it would take so much more than a silly, superficial compliment to change the way they actually reviewed a movie.
The official Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2 account wrote, "Just had an absolute brofest on Zoom with Cody Leach, and I have to admit, he's very handsome, like me."
Wait. Pull yourself together, man. I've got it. He reviewed Blood and Honey 2. I bet all this obvious arse kissing hasn't swayed his opinion at all.
And you can absolutely tell that there has been an upgrade in the writing ability here, because there's actually a story this time.
There you have it. The story has to be good, because just saying it's better in comparison to another movie isn't actually a movie review. It's coping. I'm going to take you through Blood and Honey 2 right now to prove, beyond doubt, with an audience the size of his, he wouldn't just say positive things because they stroked his ego. Right? The movie opens the same way the first one did, with a 3-minute-long animated exposition dump, which is intended to convince everybody the Christopher Robin from the first movie somehow went on to become a doctor. And poor Christopher is having a challenging time convincing people he didn't kill everybody that died in the first movie. Then the actual movie starts with 3 ladies in a caravan playing with a Ouija board, the way grown-up ladies often do. And then an unexpected violent blow to the caravan door initiates some seriously gripping dialogue, when one girl asks another girl why she's afraid to go outside to see what smashed the door in the middle of the night. In normal circumstances, I wouldn't even know what to do with a question like that. But knowing they are caravanning in an area that is supposedly notorious for murder and bloodshed, according to their own story, this film has already earned itself the coveted title of fastest film to feck me off in 2024. Then the special effects team sets a pipe down next to one of the girls and has fake blood fly out of her mouth to imply that the pipe went through her from somewhere outside, even though all you have to do is look at it to see the pipe is staying still while she's squirming around. And then the other girl gets her hand caught in the door, and that brings the first appearance of this movie's many rubber hands. And if you look at this effect, it's twice the size of her other hand. Then the giant caravan is picked up and tossed on its side at an impossible angle, if physics mean anything to you. The blonde girl's limbs are broken as if they're made of paper, as we are treated to the lush tones of Free Pixabay bone-breaking sound effects. As Winnie's making his way through her limbs, the rubber hands are getting slightly distracting. And then the other girl who was caught in a fire suddenly has 6 pounds of prosthetics on her face, even though fire removes things as opposed to adding it on. But all that stuff ends up coming off her face anyways when the owl hits her with a pole. It's just too dark to see any of it. And then we finally meet this movie's Christopher Robin, whom I should mention is not the same Christopher from the first movie. Why are you doing that? Christopher's also this movie's producer, Scott Jeffrey. And that means he probably got to pocket both of the wages, which is very important for these two. So apparently Christopher is going through therapy. When his session is done, his lovely friend Lexi insists on driving him home, even though he is concerned about her being associated with him in public. Now, if I were him, I would be more concerned with people seeing me out with a girl wearing a flannel shirt and sexy suspender socks. But that's just me. Meanwhile, the police stumble across the leftovers from the opening scene. And after that, a bunch of guys go out with shotguns looking for whoever killed the girls. And that's when we're finally introduced to the bad guys. The Owl character gives us their motivations for this film by telling us they never should have trusted Christopher Robin.
We trusted Christopher.
And during his imitation 17th century war general rant, his rubber hands nearly hit the camera like some 1980s 3D movie. And then they declare war on pretty much everybody for no discernible reason. And that means this movie's antagonist might as well be a Sharknado Minus all the laughing, of course. The next section of the story kicks off with the shotgun boys dandering around through fog machine fog in the dark. And after 3 tension-free minutes of watching them react to 200 different sounds, sound number 201 causes them to send one of the fellas off into the dark on his own to figure out what it was, because of course that's what you would do. Then the pig character, who I won't be calling Piglet at any point in this video, springs out and catches them off guard, even though there's nothing for it to hide behind for miles. So they throw some fake blood and copy and paste muzzle flash effects in front of the gun without tracking it properly. Then they make a gun noise to give the effect of a pig being shot. Examining the aftermath, I don't know what the hell we're looking at even with my fancy editing software. Then they hear a scream off in the distance from the friend they sent away to be attacked by the Winnie character. And when they go to help him, one of them gets shot, so they cover his face in whatever leftover pasta they had at the craft table that day. I'm only kidding. They wouldn't have forked out for catering. You have to pay for that. And then Winnie takes the gun from the last fella, who for some reason never bothered using it while this was all going on, and he drives the blunt end of it up through the man's jaw and out the top of his skull. At which point the guy says, "Fuck you," which is a remarkable act of defiance for somebody without a functioning brain. And then, the next morning, probably, the first character wakes up with half a pound of something you would never order from the deli counter glued to his face. He wanders away and falls down again, and in cinematic terms, that's referred to as a pointless scene. Meanwhile, young Christopher's playing doctor in an actual hospital, and right after he's done injecting somebody, he's fired, and he removes his totally real stethoscope to mark the fact he is officially done with all of this. But he's not really done with all this, because the next thing you know, they wheel in Mortadella Face, who fell down in the field, and Christopher says he knows him. And then back at home, we meet the star of this movie as far as I'm concerned. Christopher's little sister is adorable, and she can act, and I have nothing but praise for her performance in this movie. And then some random father and son team are out doing random father and son things until the owl character sweeps in and takes the father. Now, we still don't really know why any of this is happening, but I assure you we are probably going to find out very soon, because these guys are filmmakers. Then Christopher's therapist hypnotizes him. And after 40 minutes of excruciatingly slow, flashbacky stuff, he leaps up off the couch and proclaims somebody abducted his brother when he was young. And then the police locate the bad guy's underground hangout that we saw at the start of the film. And then the Tigger character puts his hand right through one of the officer's bodies. And in the next slow, dull, heavy discussion about things that happened a very long time ago in this supposed slasher movie, Christopher starts a conversation with his mom about his abducted brother. And halfway into the talk, his father comes in. When his father offers them privacy, Christopher encourages him to come in and join them. In cinematic terms, that is known as a pointless scene. Both of his parents bang on for ages, like we're watching Steel Magnolias instead of a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. And for our next slow, dull, heavy discussion about something that happened a really long time ago in this supposed slasher movie, a police officer comes and talks to Christopher and his parents. He sort of drifts off while they're all talking, and I don't blame him at all. And then they go to a rave, and 15 seconds after they get there, they're told they're not wanted, so they all leave. And in cinematic terms, you know. And then Christopher goes to the hospital, and Mortadella Face tells Christopher he was attacked by the beloved childhood icons this movie is shamelessly cashing in on. And when Christopher reminds the character he's also the producer and half of this was his idea, Mortadella Face shows him his face. For no reason. When Christopher looks up, he sees an old man looking in at them through a window, and he remembers him as the guy who abducted his brother a million years ago. And when he runs off to chase him, we watch one of Christopher's friends coming out of the shower, and he finds huge chunks of random body parts all over his floor. But he's not fazed by it. He just strolls through it until he gets outside, where the owl attacks him. He covers his face with some kind of corrosive secretion and pokes him in the eyes with his big rubber fingers. And the scene ends with a slow motion shot of a dripping shower head, which is either symbolism or evidence the filmmakers don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. I'll let you decide. And then Christopher, the straight shooter up until 9 seconds ago, follows the man home from the hospital and breaks into his house with an iron bar, instead of just calling the police. Maybe there's some evidence inside. Maybe his actual brother is still sitting in there 20 plus years later. And just when I was thinking things might get a bit heated here, another slow, dull, heavy discussion about something that happened a really long time ago happens in this supposed slasher movie. Christopher tells the man to admit what he did, and despite having clearly gotten away with it for the last 20 plus years, he just voluntarily confesses. And he tells him he abducted children for a doctor who paid off his gambling debts in return. And the doctor turned the abducted kids into monsters and then killed them. But the kids didn't stay dead. 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 They came back to life. But the kids didn't stay dead. They came back to life. The kids didn't stay dead. They came back to life. Then he takes up another 3 minutes of screen time talking about the lengths he went to ensure there was no evidence linking him to the crimes, as he's openly admitting to the crimes. What the fuck is going on? I literally got up to get myself a drink, and when I came back, he was still dumping information all over the place. So he ends up popping himself at the end of the confession instead of at the beginning of it, the way we all probably would have preferred. And then we jump over to Christopher's friend Lexi, who's babysitting, and they hear something in the house. And right as they're hearing it, the police chief is trying to phone the house because the kid she is babysitting is his grandson. That's right. They send a remote control car with a camera on it to try and figure out who's downstairs, but it's the Winnie character, so he breaks the remote control car and chases them. And lucky for them, the police are waiting outside. But not so lucky for the police, Winnie pulls the officer's arm off. And do you know what that means? The return of the rubber hand. And then Christopher listens to an old-timey tape from the evil doctor who supposedly abducted his brother. And the tape says the children that he's genetically modifying are also becoming magic with regenerative properties. And when they finally turned magical, the doctor just knew it was time to put an end to the genetically modified, magic regenerating, living dead children.
There's been an upgrade in the writing ability here because there's actually a story this time.
And then Lexi phones Christopher to tell him what's happened, and you can barely see the ambulances right behind her. Maybe because they're trying to cover up some aspect of the ambulance's appearance? Or maybe that's just me applying logic to an illogical situation, seeing as we're talking about genetically altered magic regenerating living dead children now. So she tells Christopher to get home as quickly as possible because she thinks his parents are in danger, even though she had no direct interaction with Winnie. Even if she did, it's not like it speaks or declares its intentions, but she was right, funny enough. And Winnie takes out Mummy first, and then Daddy, and then we head back to the rave, which is in full swing now. I can't really show you any of it because the abrupt onslaught of sudden nudity is worse than Malcolm McDowell's Caligula movie. As somebody who's been to dozens of UK raves, I can tell you, they're not actually like that. I'm willing to bet this is probably just our filmmaker friends taking liberties with young ladies who'd like to be famous. That's just me guessing. And as the obvious centerpiece of this film starts unfolding, we're treated to an overblown CGI fake blood fest. And then they have the Winnie character chase after some of the girls the way a bear would. And it's special. Then the Tigger character, not Tigger, takes a bunch more of them out. And he uses his claws and talks like Freddy Krueger, calling the girls a bitch every 9 seconds. And my favorite kill of his is the one that ends with them dropping a rubber doll on the ground. By the time literally hundreds of partygoers are dead because they couldn't manage to escape 2 killers somehow, Christopher shows up and he's got a gun now and he shoots the tiger, but it gets away. And while it's getting away, our pal Winnie is setting girls on fire and cutting them in half with saws and pulling their heads off their bodies. And then finally, Christopher and Winnie meet up outside for the ultimate final battle we've all been hankering for. And Winnie turns into Leatherface with a chainsaw that's also somehow on fire. And then Lexi leaves the safety of the police and ends up in the fake fog forest looking for Christopher, which works out perfect because the movie's almost over. And Winnie gets Christopher on his back, and just when he's about to finish him off, Winnie looks down and recognizes the grave he climbed out of all those years ago as a regenerative, DNA-altered, half-animal, living dead zombie magic kid. What the fuck am I saying?
There's been an upgrade in the writing ability.
Because the grave happens to be sitting right there where Christopher is, somehow. And that causes not Leatherface to pause for a moment and reflect. So Christopher takes advantage of the opportunity and apologizes to his brother for the things that happened to him all those years ago. And then he gets choked. But along comes Lexi to the rescue. Then Christopher hits Winnie with an axe, and that cracks his head open like a ceramic pot. And he tumbles backwards into the grave from his childhood. And I know you're probably expecting the camera to pan up to the slow motion dripping shower head. The movie ends with us finding out his little sister survived, which is something I do actually appreciate about watching whatever the fuck we just watched. There you have it, folks, a story about Christopher Robin, all grown up to fight his regenerative, DNA-altered, half-animal, living dead, zombie, magic kid brother. And to be honest, now that it's done, I do feel like I overreacted a bit. Just like part one, this is a terrible movie made exclusively for profit off of the back of a beloved childhood cultural icon. It's not art. It's devious. But I support capitalism. And it's over now. They've made their money and they're moving on.
And we kind of absolutely consumed with the next batch of films. Because there's so many coming up. Like, we've shot Bambi recently, that was like January. Peter Pan, Scott's directing, that's like next month. And then we're going into Pinocchio after that, so we're steamrolling a bit.
I have some work ahead of me, and I hope you're all going to join me. Until next time, folks. It's me, Jonny, from that video you just watched, although I'm sure you know who I am, right? You should subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, it's easy to do, and it makes creative people like myself who thrive on compliments feel all warm and fuzzy. And if you like that last video, click on this next video because it's just as amazing. Click on it.